Some betrayals don't come with shouting or slammed doors. They arrive quietly, through an email, a missing bank balance, or a truth uncovered too late. This channel is for the stories that begin where trust ends. Stories of marriages that collapsed without warning, of love replaced by calculation, and of husbands who thought silence would erase responsibility. Here, every story peels back the layers of deception: digital breakups, financial ambushes, double lives, and the quiet strength that follows devastation. These are not fairy tales. These are raw, lived experiences where patience becomes power and truth becomes the ultimate revenge. If you've ever wondered how betrayal really unfolds behind closed doors and what happens when the person left behind stops breaking and starts watching, you're in the right place. Every story shared here proves one thing: walking away doesn't end the story. Sometimes it's only the beginning. The email arrived without a warning, without even the decency of a phone call. One click opened a message written in stiff legal language, the kind meant to erase years with a single stroke. No greeting, no explanation, just a declaration that a marriage was over, delivered like a canceled subscription. The room felt smaller after reading it, as if the walls themselves had leaned in to listen to the betrayal unfold. Only hours earlier, the house had been quiet in a tender way. Plans for the future still lived in unopened drawers and whispered thoughts. There was a sense that something fragile and sacred was forming, unseen but deeply felt. That hope made the words on the screen burn even more. A husband who once promised protection chose distance instead. Love was reduced to a subject line, and commitment disappeared the moment send was pressed. The shock wasn't just about the divorce. It was the timing. It was the cruelty of choosing silence during a moment that demanded care. The email revealed more than an ending. It exposed a man who had been rehearsing this exit for weeks, maybe months. Clues began lining up in memory: late nights blamed on work, sudden secrecy with a phone, impatience where warmth used to live. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was calculated. What hurt most was realizing how carefully the truth had been hidden. While vows were still spoken in public, another life was quietly being assembled elsewhere. The email confirmed what intuition had tried to warn about all along. The husband writing those words wasn't the partner remembered from the early days. He was a stranger skilled at pretending. Every affectionate gesture from the past now felt staged, a performance meant to delay discovery until the exit was clean. The message ended with instructions, not apologies. Lawyers, deadlines, finality. No concern for the emotional wreckage left behind. No acknowledgement of the life that was still growing, the future that had been planned together. Just cold efficiency, as if removing himself from responsibility could also erase the damage. That email didn't just end a marriage. It revealed exactly who had been sharing the bed all along. The bank alert came early. The kind usually ignored, but something about it felt wrong before the screen even unlocked. Numbers that once offered reassurance now stared back hollow and stripped clean. The shared account, the one built with years of mutual effort, careful budgeting, and whispered plans for tomorrow, had been drained to the last dollar. Not a mistake, not fraud, a deliberate sweep executed with precision and no hesitation. Every deposit remembered its purpose: medical appointments penciled into calendars, savings set aside for a future that had been spoken into existence together. That money wasn't just currency, it was trust converted into numbers. Watching it vanish felt like witnessing a theft carried out by someone who knew exactly where everything was kept. The timing was no accident. It happened right after the email, as if stripping financial security was meant to reinforce the message. Control had shifted, and mercy wasn't part of the plan. Panic arrived fast, followed by a deeper realization that cut sharper. This wasn't desperation, it was strategy. Only someone who had planned an escape would move so quickly, so thoroughly. Statements revealed transfers made in the dead of night, accounts opened months earlier under unfamiliar names. A pattern emerged, ugly and undeniable. While promises were still being made at home, exits were being mapped elsewhere. The betrayal widened with every discovery. Bills were due, appointments approaching, and suddenly there was nothing to fall back on. What should have been protection became punishment. The husband knew exactly what that money meant and chose to weaponize it anyway. That kind of cruelty doesn't happen suddenly. It grows quietly behind smiles and rehearsed affection. Memories began rewriting themselves. Arguments about spending that once seemed trivial now felt like rehearsals. Questions about finances that felt controlling suddenly made sense. This wasn't just abandonment, it was an attempt to leave devastation behind, to force silence through fear. But fear has a way of sharpening awareness. Receipts were saved, screenshots archived, dates and times carefully noted. Each transaction told a story of intent, and intent has consequences. The accounts may have been emptied, but evidence was overflowing. What was taken wasn't gone, it was documented, traceable, and waiting to be answered for. That financial ambush revealed the truth no apology ever could. Love hadn't been lost, it had been exploited. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It crept in through small inconsistencies that were easy to dismiss at first. Nights that ran too late, calls taken in other rooms, a phone that never left his hand and was suddenly locked with a new password. The man who once shared everything now guarded fragments of his life like state secrets, and that silence spoke louder than any confession. Memories began rearranging themselves under closer inspection. Business trips that didn't line up with calendars, receipts tucked into jacket pockets from places never mentioned, a faint, unfamiliar perfume clinging to shirts explained away with careless excuses. Each detail felt insignificant alone, but together they painted a picture too clear to ignore. Devotion hadn't faded, it had been redirected. One evening, curiosity met opportunity. A tablet left behind synced more than it should have. Messages surfaced, intimate and casual in a way reserved for someone who felt permanent. Inside jokes, future plans, complaints about a marriage portrayed as an inconvenience. Reading those words felt like stepping into a parallel life where vows were mocked and loyalty was treated as temporary. The cruelty that followed suddenly made sense. He had already moved on long before choosing to destroy what was left behind. The betrayal went deeper than an affair. There were lies layered beneath lies, a second apartment under the guise of office space, expenses disguised as work-related, even conversations rehearsed to maintain the illusion of normalcy at home. The skill it took to live two lives so seamlessly was chilling. This wasn't recklessness, it was discipline applied to deception. Anger arrived, but it wasn't loud. It settled into something colder and more focused. Screenshots replaced tears. Dates, names, and locations were carefully recorded. The hidden life revealed itself piece by piece, and each piece added weight to the truth. The man who walked out by email and emptied accounts wasn't acting out of panic. He was protecting a new reality built on lies. The most painful realization wasn't the existence of someone else. It was understanding how easily empathy had been shut off. The husband knew exactly what damage would be caused and chose it anyway. That knowledge changed everything. Sympathy evaporated. What remained was clarity. By the time the last secret surfaced, the shock had transformed into resolve. The double life had been exposed, and nothing hidden stays protected forever. Pain had a way of stripping away noise until only truth remained. What was expected to break instead became precise. While he moved on believing the damage was final, something quieter was forming underneath the chaos. Silence turned useful. Waiting became strategy. Every insult, every careless move was observed rather than reacted to. because impulsive anger would have only handed him the control he thought he already had. Documents began telling a fuller story than his lies ever could. Bank records matched messages. Timelines overlapped in ways that exposed intent rather than coincidence. Friends who once stayed neutral started filling in gaps, shocked by how much had been hidden from everyone. Even his confidence worked against him. The belief that everything had been erased made him sloppy. Assumptions are dangerous when someone is paying attention. Legal advice came early, quiet, and thorough. Every move he made to protect himself only added another layer of proof. The email, the emptied accounts, the secret life, all of it formed a pattern that couldn't be dismissed as misunderstanding. He thought walking away meant freedom. Instead, it meant accountability without warning. There was no dramatic confrontation, no public scene. Strength showed up in restraint. Each piece of evidence was collected calmly, stored carefully, and handed over at the right moment. The man who once controlled the narrative suddenly found himself reacting instead of directing. That shift was everything. Power doesn't need to announce itself to be effective. Emotions still surfaced, but it no longer dictated decisions. Betrayal had been transformed into leverage. His own actions spoke louder than any accusation ever could. The same precision used to dismantle a marriage was now working against him, legally and financially. Consequences arrived not as revenge fantasies, but as facts he couldn't outrun. What hurt him most wasn't punishment, it was exposure. Lies laid out plainly lose their charm. Secrets dragged into daylight don't survive long. The version of himself he tried so hard to protect collapsed under the weight of documented truth. No insults were needed. Reality did the work. By the time everything was finalized, the victory he thought he claimed had vanished. What remained was a future rebuilt without deception and a lesson etched into his life forever. Betrayal doesn't disappear when ignored. It waits to be answered. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel seen, you're not alone. More stories like this are coming. Stories where secrets surface, lies collapse, and consequences finally arrive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what unfolds next. Your support keeps these stories alive and the truth moving forward.